silence here out in New York. Solar eclipse is going on right now. Can't really see it that much, but just sitting out here, just a bunch of people coming out from the offices, walking around, looking up at the sky, and just thinking about how many people in the past have actually died like horrific deaths over something like this. You know, people used to think like the solar eclipse was something that was a portent of something really bad happening. So that just shows that people always will find reasons to kind of be against each other and kind of hurt each other off of things that have nothing to do with what the actions that they're going to do. But at the same point, you see a situation where you just have a lot of people are just out here looking up at the sky all around the world, at least all around this country, that are united over something, the same arbitrary thing that can separate people is the same thing that can unite people in a different way, depending on how you approach that issue, depending on how you understand that issue. So I think that's just a pretty cool thing to just think of, and to show that the same things that can separate people are the same things that can unite people if you just treat it in a different way.
The eclipse was a few days ago. That was a video that I just posted before this, and I just wanted to add some thoughts that I had that involved something that happened on that day, later that day, and also something that happened just yesterday. So later that day, I went to a MAGA meetup, which is a Make America Great Again meetup. That's just fans of the current administration of Donald J. Trump. It was some of the people that I made that Alex Jones video with. There'll be links in the low bar to that video of explaining that process. So we were out there, and the group decided to perform the song again. There was about maybe 30 to 40 people at this bar. It was the third time we'd met at this bar. We'd met at this bar every Wednesday bi-weekly for the last 3 times. And this time they decided to perform the song outside, and then we took like a group picture out there. They started listening to Trump's speech on change of Afghanistan policy on Monday night in a little Bluetooth speaker, and somebody had one of those Trump flags, the Trump Make America Great Again blue flags, and the owner ended up coming out and objecting to our presence there, saying it's not really good for business. When I was inside the bar while the people were still outside, I saw some patrons in the bar kind of whispering to talking to the waitress and pointing outside. There was some windows at the bar. One of the walls was made out of windows. So they looked concerned, they seemed concerned. And it being in New York City, Upper West Side, it's a liberal city. It's a city that voted blue, heavily blue. So I personally understood why the owner and even the patrons would think, oh, this is a bar associated with Trump, and Trump is this negative person. This whole Make America Great Again thing is really horrible, especially counting on the time that this happened with right after the Charlottesville incident, where there was a supposed white supremacist rally. It was a Unite the Right rally, and then anti-protesters came, people who were protesting against the Unite the Right, ostensibly saying they were there against racism and things like this. But this is Black Lives Matter, this is Antifa, these are groups that are known for their own violence. Situation occurred, somebody rammed a car through the crowd, killing one person who was caught between the car that person hit and the car in front that was stopped in front of that. This person, Heather Heyer, has become more of it's become a call-out point, at least at the few events that I've been to since then. Her name has been chanted, a few protests I've been to. So now she's kind of, I don't say a martyr to the left, but they're holding her up as an example of how violent the right is, whereas people on the left have been increasing violence, not mortal violence. Nobody died through attacks, but bike locks to the head, punch Nazis. Violent rhetoric and violent action, destruction of property has been there in the political process from protests on the left for a long time. So this has been ramping up to this situation. But we can discuss that in a separate video. So regardless, I can understand why this bartender was thinking, okay, this owner was thinking, look, this might not be good for my brand. This might not be a good thing for me to be associated with. This is the same reason that you see after the Charlottesville incident, a lot of the people in the business community decided to leave. This is the same reason that the Unite the Right, at the not the Unite the Right, but at the March on Google March protest that I went to, the reason Google decided to finally fire James Damore after the memo that had already been spread around the company was made public. Because these are companies, I do understand people's perceptions of things change the way they experience that things. The thing itself does not necessarily have to change, but where you're looking at it from, your personal perception does change it. The solar eclipse was a perfect example. If you looked up at the sun without any glasses, you just saw this bright, blinding thing like Donald Trump did. Okay, when Trump did that, there's a photo of him looking up without the glasses, and anyway, there was some coverage on Fox News where Tucker Carlson apparently said that it was one of the greatest things a president has ever done, and some news stations covered it as if he was being serious and not being sarcastic, and I was just thinking how ridiculous that was, because when I saw that photo, I was thinking, yeah, I guarantee you, or I was just joking around and saying somebody is going to cover this saying like Donald Trump blinds 30 people due to setting bad example of staring into the sun without glasses. I personally stare into the sun without glasses occasionally, not during a solar eclipse, but just for in general. I like kind of getting the sun on me and feeling that. I think I blame Superman comics with looking at the sun and getting energy from the sun. Anyway, I digress. Okay, back to the point. What I was trying to say is the solar eclipse, depending on how you look at the sun, if you look at it without the glasses, you get a different experience. Now, if you look at it with certain glasses, you get to actually see how much of the moon is on there. Depending on your location, if you're under the path where you're going to have the full darkness, you had about, I think, what was it, 5 minutes? I don't know how long it was, but you actually got to see things really change, the full changes of the complete darkness of the total solar eclipse. Some places like where I was, it had about 75% solar eclipse, and I didn't really notice it becoming that much darker. It may have been a little darker. It may have seemed like something was going on. If there weren't hundreds of thousands of people, if there weren't thousands of people in the street stopping to look up, if I hadn't had the information about the solar eclipse happening, would I even have recognized that something was going on? Probably not. There was clouds. There was a cloudy day. I would have just thought, oh, it's just a little cloudy for a while. And you think about this. The sun is so bright that even if you had, even if you had that 75% of it covered, that light coming off of it is still enough to properly light the earth. So you couldn't really tell unless you were aware of it, unless you knew more information about what was going on in that situation. Unless you had the appropriate glasses to actually look and see the moon in front of it, you likely wouldn't even been able to tell that something was going on. And the reason I'm pointing this out is because with that bar situation, is that the people just think they see Trump, and for Trump, that Trump side, that Trump flag being associated with being a place that supports Donald Trump. In certain locations, it is a cancer. In certain locations, it is a situation that would lose that guy business. We end up having a meetup there once, bi-weekly, on a Monday night. It's a slow night, but sure, you get 30 people in there. You get 30 to 40 people in there. Be scared. You got 30 to 40 Trump supporters in New York. But you get that group of people in there. That bar, from that experience, gets notified. It gets people in the neighborhood or people in the area start noticing, saying this bar is a Trump bar. And then the locals, the people who come there on a regular basis, all the other days of the week, the 6 other days of the week, the 7 days of the week where it's not there, they decide to stop coming. That word gets spread out, and then people decide, okay, we don't want to come here. And he loses more money that way. So I completely understand. Some of the people in the group were less understanding of that because they were looking at it from a different point, like, oh, we're just here. We can't just express ourselves in a certain way. And I get that. I get the both sides to it. But if you don't understand what's going on, can you truly hate something? Can you truly dislike something? If what they had, their opinion that they had of Trump, their opinion that they had of what Trump supporters were, or of what the social experience or the social reaction to being a Trump bar would be of the bar owner was, this is a negative thing, this is not what I want. There were some patrons in there who were like, we're worried, we don't want to be in here with these Trump supporters. Even though it's a varied mix of people, they didn't really talk to people, it's just hearing the things from before. Now, I get that. And I remember sitting during the Eclipse and thinking, look, if I had, let's say, for example, a Trump shirt on or a Trump hat on, would people have shared with me their glasses like they did? Like, oh, look at the glass. I mean, I see you sitting out here, you don't have glasses. Would they have been as welcoming to just share that experience and be like, here? And I don't know. Depends on where you are. Depends on the location that you're in. Depends on the situation that you're in, where somebody's political affiliation would actually have an issue, would have a change of what you would react to them as. Now, another story tying in with politics and the Sun situation was this article saying that the path of the Sun, of the Eclipse, went over a lot of red states, a lot of places that voted for Donald Trump. So they're saying, it was just in the Atlantic, they said that it shows racism in a way, it shows racial inequality in the United States because it doesn't pass over areas where a lot of black people live. Now, I'm not even going to touch on the absurdity of that. I'm just going to use that as an example to show that, okay, that Trump situation, being at a bar with Trump supporters, wondering if I have these glasses on, will somebody be able to share their glasses with me? What will my treatment be being a Trump supporter in one location, in here in New York, versus the entire path of that Sun, most of the path going into the red states. If you go to one of those red areas, most of the country, most of the actual landmass in the country, with a Trump hat on, holding a Trump flag, no one would really treat you in a negative way. If you go to a bar there with one, nobody would really think like, oh, let's not have this be associated to this bar. Yet you have certain locations where that is due to their perception of Trump, of the social atmosphere, which may be completely accurate to that location that they're in. Going to tie this in now with the speech that happened last night. There was a rally last night in Arizona, and I had some friends that were to watch it. We're just interested to see what was going to happen after the Afghanistan talk, with this heated political time with this last week with the Charlottesville situation. Wanted to see, I hadn't seen one of his rallies live in a while, President Donald J. Trump. So I sat there and I watched it, and to me I was thinking, okay, this is similar to the things I had heard during the campaign. He's talking about things I understand. He spent a lot of time just reading back the different speeches and not communiques, the different speeches and statements that he'd made from Charlottesville. So after that, we decided, okay, let me check the coverage. Let's check the news coverage. Went to CNN, and of course but as expected, they were very, very somber about what had happened. They were talking about how he was he's a constant liar. It was Don Lemon's show. He had a panel of people on there talking about how he's a liar, he admits this. They say he omitted the part where he said, yes, I condemn the violence, and on both sides at the end. That's the part that they read, and they said, look, he's lying like he doesn't understand that we have film, that we're going to queue up the film. And that struck me as odd, because that's something I'd been saying about politicians. Or not as odd, but it struck me because it reminded me of something I've been saying about politicians and media for a while, just media personalities, that they seem to say things like they don't understand that people have the internet, that I used to say this directly. It seems politicians don't understand that they can say something, you can ask them, how about when you said this? And then they say, I never said this. And you can literally just look it up on your phone, get a video clip about it, and post it and say, this is you saying this 2 weeks ago. How come you're going to act like you didn't say it? So the media has been doing this as well. They're saying he was lying by omitting that last part of saying both sides, talking about violence from the right and the left, especially at the Unite the Right rally, talking about how not just the people who were there for the rally, but the people who came to protest against the rally were also violent. Not also just talking about how there's been violence from the political left and the political right in the past at different levels, different forms of violence, different forms of rhetoric. That's been there, that's existed. So he was saying, Don Lemon was saying that it's a lie if you omit. Now, how many times have CNN people, have politicians, have other people quoted Donald J. Trump's, I think it was the speech where he was announcing that he was going to run for presidency. He said about illegal immigrants coming through Mexico. He said they're not sending their, I'm paraphrasing here, he said they're not sending their best, they're sending rapists, criminals, and I'm sure some of them are good people. That's how he ends the quote. It's the same sentence. It's the same paragraph. That's the context that it's in. Yet people focus on that aspect to say Donald Trump is racist, or Donald Trump hates Mexicans, or says Mexicans are all bad people. He's disparaging of Mexicans. Now, discount that Mexican isn't a race. They say it's a dog whistle, or it's a wink, wink, like to, you know what he's talking about thing, talking about Latin Americans. Then I've also been over the fact, do Latin Americans really consider, everybody from South America, Latin America, are they all considered non-white? Like, let's say you had somebody travel from Portugal and move to Brazil, like years ago, generations ago, and they've only intermarried between Portuguese families. Wouldn't they technically still be as white as a German who traveled to, let's say, Ohio 3 generations ago and only married within German families? Wouldn't those be both white people? So this whole idea that's like a racist thing when you're talking about nationality and geography and locations, I don't think that's an accurate statement to make. But yeah, this whole idea that you can take what Donald Trump said and only focus on this first part that he said, they're sending rapists, sending criminals, and that is an accurate statement since there's a very high percentage of the women and girls that come across the border crossings end up being sexually assaulted and raped during that process. And then there's also the examples of the people who come across the border illegally, through the southern border illegally, and commit crimes here in the United States of America. So those are not fallacious statements, yet they hold on to that part and ignore the part where he says, and I'm sure some of them are good people. So that omission, if Donald Trump omitting him saying that the media is criticizing me for saying I condemn violence, and omitting the part where he says on both sides, if that is a lie by omission, then aren't all the times that the CNN and other people on the left or the right or whatever they are politically have focused on Donald Trump's statement and omitted the part where he says, and I'm sure some of them are good people, are all those people lying as well? And what's going to happen is, I'm pretty sure soon there'll be a supercut of clips of people focusing on that, on omitting that I'm sure some of them are good people thing. I actually had a situation where somebody online actually just recently pointed out how Donald Trump was racist, and then somebody asked how, he said the Mexican thing, and then the person finally actually posted the entire quote, even including that I'm sure some of them are good people, but for some reason he just didn't register that, he just didn't pay lip service to that and say, okay, well, why are you focusing on just the bad part and not the part where he says I'm sure some of them are good people? Now, what I'm trying to understand here is, why does this happen? Why is it that someone can say something like that? You can say this person, by omitting, they're lying, but when I omit, I'm not lying. Or when somebody on my side omits, I'm not lying. When this group commits violence in a similar manner, if they say we're going to punch Nazis, if they're going to go and hit people in the head with bike locks, if they're going to burn places down, if they're going to completely non-platform people, prevent people from speaking in certain locations, that's not violence. But if this other group does this other group is talking about rhetoric, saying, oh, we should do this about this race, then that's violence. That's something that needs to be stopped. What are these double standards? What does it get to the point where you think, okay, if it's on my team, it's good. If it's not on my team, it's bad, when it's the same situation? And I think it comes down to this thing where if you come in thinking this person's innately evil, they don't get the benefit of the doubt of, oh, maybe they don't mean this, or maybe they need to qualify this in this way, or maybe it's for the greater good. So going back to the solar eclipse, depending on where you're standing, depending on where you look at this from, depending on how you look at something, it changes what that thing is. The moon passed over the path of the sun, and depending on the location that you're in, you didn't notice. depending on the location you were at, you noticed a lot. Now, depending on those different locations, even if you knew what was happening and you were out of the path of that, or if you were out in like Alaska or something, I think it was Alaska, but there's a map that shows the locations. Let's say you were out in Boston, you didn't notice pretty much anything, even if you knew there was a solar eclipse coming. If you were right under the path of the solar eclipse and you had no idea one was coming and you saw it, that would have surprised you in an entirely different way. Your experience would have been different. Now, going back to what I had mentioned in that initial video, there's been hundreds of thousands of people who died horrible, horrible deaths due to solar eclipses. They said, okay, the world is ending, or the gods are angry at us, so we got to sacrifice these people for it, or it's a sign of danger, it's a sign of the end times. All these different thoughts, because they had a lack of information at that time. They saw this just natural progression, this thing that occurred in the cosmos, the thing that just occurred as a portent of evil, and they reacted to it in a different way. Were they correct? I think we can all agree. I mean, most of you reading this or listening to this can pretty much agree, no, they were not correct. These people shouldn't have died viciously. Now, I'll get into that in a later video about that situation, about what goes through to get somebody to react to evil in that certain way, but it's understandable. If somebody does truly think X thing is evil, then you can understand and you can sort of rationalize behaving in a certain way if you truly believe, or if you can make the case that something is evil. And that's what I'm worried about, is you get to this point where we have a political environment. And you see, it's not we have a political environment today only, because just like I'm pointing out here, in the past, when you had, let's say, the Incans or the Latin American, Southern Americans, the Southern American tribes, killing people over things like a solar eclipse, that was a political issue. So now when you have a situation where you have people killing each other off of thinking Donald Trump is evil, or these people are evil white supremacists, when you get to a situation where it's a question of evil, that justifies certain behavior that wouldn't be otherwise justified. So I think it's very important that we identify what actually is evil, because let me say here, I'm not Christian, I'm not that religious, I'm atheist when it comes to actual theologies, but I do definitely believe there is evil. Evil is a thing that exists. Evil is a thing that should be fought. I think part of evil is lack of knowledge when you can have knowledge. Part of the actions that occur when somebody could be avoided, when you could easily be avoided by having a different amount of information, of having access to certain things, and that's not given and that's not done. I think that gives a chance for evil to truly occur and to truly happen. But yeah, identify what evil is, react appropriately to it, but it's also very, very important to be sure what you're reacting to is evil. Otherwise, you run the chance of being the one that is committing an evil act. So that's pretty much a long ramble. I haven't made a video in a while, sorry about that. But that's it for now. I have a few more videos in planning. I hope you guys enjoyed the solar eclipse, if you were somewhere to see it. And I was just thinking about how different experiences I remember for different people. For me, I just wanted to watch the people having it. It was a great time seeing it. And then while I was still out there, I get a WhatsApp call, and it's from my sister in Nairobi, and I pick up, and my nephew is on the phone, and he's talking to me, and like, yeah, my sister was like, he wanted to speak to you, and then at the end of the conversation, end up saying, I love you to him, and I just kind of remember that, that was the first time that I ever said I love you to him, because before he was 2, last time I saw him, he was just 2 in a couple of months, and he hadn't really been formulating sentences and paragraphs to the sense that he is now, because he was having like full conversations and things. But I was just thinking like, wow, that might be the first time that I actually said that to him, and he said it back, and it was just really cool. And for me, that's why I'm going to remember that solar eclipse more because of that than anything else. So did you guys experience the solar eclipse? How was yours? And hope you've been okay. And if you've seen the speech that rallied Donald Trump, let me know what you think in the low bar. And till next video, it's Silas. Thanks for listening. Like, share, and subscribe. And goodbye.